Hi, this is Brenda Hirchmer. It's a pleasure working with Recreation and Parks Association of the Yukon and people like you who are receptive to and see the value of working with partners. So, why consider working with others? Well, there's no doubt that it saves money and reduces duplication, but a lot of times those collective lenses often result in more and better and certainly often more innovative services for residents. Uh, Citizens really typically don't care who provides the service. They just want it to be the best it can be with the resources that are available. Sometimes we need to work with others, though, for other reasons. Sometimes we might be too small an organization to meet a complex challenge on our own. Uh, but it also does totally increase the potential for receiving grants. Funders these days really like to see different partners working together, whether it's different organizations, but also working across nonprofits, government, and businesses. I think involving and working with others also provides more opportunities for getting citizens involved. That's really important as well for making good decisions. But perhaps most importantly, working with others really ultimately drives you to the point where there's a more of a chance for strengthening a sense of community spirit, not only within your own community, but in the region beyond as well. So when we talk about partnerships, I think we often come at it with different understandings of what a partnership is. And in large part, this is because there's different kinds of collaboration. This particular collaboration spectrum it came from the Tamarack Institute, and it shows the continuum of the kinds of collaboration from those on your left that are, where things are a little bit looser, to those on your right where the collaboration and the trust becomes much tighter. So on the left, sometimes your collaboration, it isn't so much about collaboration, but it's about competing. But then you're moving towards the idea of collaborating more by getting to coexisting, to communicating more, to cooperating, to coordinating, to collaborating, and ultimately integrating where you're all working together in the community. Sometimes we've lost sight of that. Not always, but in a lot of cases we have. So how does this fit within recreation and community development? Well, according to William and Flora Hewlett, community development emerges from a rich interaction among complementary approaches that actively and meaningfully engage the community and foster mutually supportive partnerships while focusing on a whole community perspective. And often that's what we're missing. We're missing that the supportive partnerships and the whole community perspective. And that's what community development gives us. That's why partnerships are so important. I think the whole idea of working collaboratively, working in partnerships, is made even more complicated because there are different kinds of partnerships. And we're going to talk about each of these four and provide some examples of each of them. Because quite often we think of partnerships in different ways. So if you start at the bottom of this pyramid, quite often we start by simply cooperating. In a lot of cases, it would be different groups from parks and recreation who come together to overlap their goals to improve efficiencies and effectiveness. Uh, the second kind of partnership would be collaboration, where these same groups develop some new goals. So rather than just being more efficient and effective, they come together, start to build some trust, and then develop some new goals. Now, both of these kinds of partnerships, cooperation and collaboration, will lead to change that reforms. So ultimately, that is about efficiencies, greater effectiveness. But ultimately, what we're hearing is we need to do more of in our communities is change that transforms. So what we're looking at there in terms of partnerships are collective impact and comprehensive community transformation. So in the case of collective impact, groups come together from different sectors, but they're coming together to address a specific social issue whether this might be something like increasing physical activity or reducing obesity or taking better care of the environment. So groups from different sectors would come together to address that particular social issue. That would lead to change that transforms, as does comprehensive community transformation, where the entire community comes together to address their community, regardless of its size, from a more holistic or systemic perspective. So those are the four kinds of partnerships: cooperation, collaboration, collective impact, and comprehensive community transformation. So let's take a look at a bit more of an explanation as well as some specific examples. So the first kind of partnerships is about cooperation. So a lot of times you'll see that, for instance, with sport and recreation groups who, for instance, might come together to hold one registration night. So that would be the idea of increasing and improving their efficiency and effectiveness. Now, the challenge with that is that it often happens, and people often cooperate because they have to. That there isn't enough to go around. So a lot of times, what happens with cooperation is that people tend to work separately and make accommodations for each other. So again, it's this kind of change that reforms. Collaboration is when the groups come together and focus on something bigger and better. So there's more, instead of a scarcity mindset, there's more of an abundance mindset where everyone works together to create a bigger pie for all. So the groups would develop new goals. So they might come together to host a community event or a community festival. But it's something new, and it's about creating this bigger pie. It's about promoting the efforts of the larger collective. So it starts to build a lot more trust, and it is one step above the idea of simply cooperating. It moves to collaborate. Now that's different from collective impact, and collective impact is a phrase that was coined by the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And this ultimately is something that we're seeing a lot more of, this kind of collective impact, where organizations put aside their individual agendas in favor of a collective approach. So you'll see groups made up of representatives from different sectors who commit to a common agenda for solving a specific social problem. So, for instance, if the issue was around healthy eating or around an issue such as bullying, what you'll start to see are groups made up from different sectors. So you'll see people coming together not only from recreation and sport and active living, but you'll start to see groups from health come together and social services, all focused on working together to solve this one specific social problem. And that's really where we start to see the kind of change that's much more transformational in nature. As well is also the kind of change that we want to see in the fourth kind of partnership. This transformational change, comprehensive community transformation. And instead of coming together around a specific social issue, an entire community comes together to address the community from more of a holistic or a systems perspective. So they look at their community and say, what are we doing well? What are our strengths? But also, where can we do better? So it's comprehensive in the sense that Parks and Recreation are at the table, really examining and contributing to quality of life, but economic development will be there as well. So what we start to see is more of a balance starting to happen in the community. So this is more inclusive, community-driven, grassroots up kind of movement that in most cases wouldn't necessarily be driven by different organizations, but more by citizens themselves, in addition to the organizations, government, and businesses as well. So it's much more of a community development, community building approach. And the trust is there. People make decisions on the basis of what is best for the entire community. That's comprehensive community transformation. And that's the kind of partnership we all want to see. This is why it's important for people for staff and volunteers from the recreation and park sector to be aware of that, because they need to be at those tables when we're starting to examine how we can all work together to ensure a stronger, healthier, more vibrant and resilient community. So there's the 4 types of partnerships: cooperation, collaboration, collective impact, and comprehensive community transformation. Let's work together. Recreation and parks staff and volunteers can play a key role in being a catalyst for bringing the sectors, bringing the community together to ensure the networking and trust building that's going to be important for our community. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit thecampusforcommunities.com.